Dorothy herself was a pioneering sort of woman. What I admired most about her, I think, was this wonderful combination of just the most, if you think of a person who was comfortable, Dorothy Giel was a comfortable person. She made you feel comfortable. There was no pretension about her. And it was misleading because she was very sophisticated, but she didn't come off as sophisticated. She came off as somebody who'd grown up on a farm in Iowa, which she had done. But even the story of her growing up in this farm is kind of interesting because she was inspired by her parents. Her father had no knowledge of farming at all. I forget what he had studied. He came from Ohio, I believe it was. But his wife, Dorothy's mother, had inherited this farm in Iowa. And he thought, well, we've got this farm. We should farm it. He was apparently ridiculed by all the other farmers who said, you know, you don't know anything about farming. And he said, no, I don't, but I can read. And so he just read about farming and ended up being a very successful farmer. And that was Dorothy's background, a little farm in Iowa. And she never lost this sort of, I don't know, Iowa Plains demeanor. She had sort of just a twinge of what I would call a Midwestern twang. Not a much. I mean, she could get rid of it because she had studied theater, but she always had this just plain folks attitude, but very determined. When she and her husband moved here from, she met him in Minnesota. He taught a while in Galesburg, Illinois at Knox College. And then they came to Big Rapids, and after I think all of her children had been born in Galesburg. But when they moved here, Dorothy started teaching at Ferris. Her degree was in drama, theater and drama, with I believe an English minor. And she started teaching as adjunct faculty at Ferris, but was more interested in getting a tenure-track position as her children got older and she had more time to be out of the home. Well, at that time, they said, she was teaching, I believe, in the English department, and they said, well, if you want a tenure-track position in the English department, you're going to have to get a master's in English. So she had studied theater. So she went to Central Michigan University, at night, and on weekends. I remember her going to these classes that were whole weekend classes. You'd spend an entire weekend, getting 3 credits in 3 days. So first she got her degree in English, and she still did not get a tenure-track position. Then they said that they needed her to teach speech and communications, which had been her major. And then they told her that if she wanted a tenure-track position, she would have to get a master's in speech and communications, which she then did, writing a paper about one of the papers that she wrote about the rhetoric of Anna Howard Shaw, about which she knew a great deal. Well, she still was passed over for that position, at which point Dorothy announced, I will never work for Ferris without a contract. And then she went and got a real estate broker's license and sold real estate for several years. Was asked several times to come back because they still needed somebody in communications, and she said, I'm sorry, I'm not going to teach without a contract. And then finally, I don't know how many years she sold real estate, but finally Ferris said, okay, we'll give you a contract. And so the last few years that she taught at Ferris, she was indeed under contract. She was such an interesting person. She had many, many, many interests, not only intellectual interests. She read avidly. She probably read 2 or 3 books a week. And I remember her saying about some friend had said that she hadn't read a book in years, and Dorothy said, can you imagine? Couldn't imagine somebody who hadn't read a book in years. So she was an avid reader, but her interests were not confined to intellectual pursuits. She quilted, she cross-stitched, she was a wonderful gardener. She wasn't a very good cook. I gotta throw that in. We all admit Dorothy was not a particularly good cook. But she liked, when she moved to Phoenix, she became a baseball fan. She started watching baseball and followed baseball. She would sit and cross-stitch while she was watching baseball games. She had made a vow that she would see all the Academy Award nominated movies before the Oscars. So she would go to the movies during the day when she was out in Phoenix, because the movies would start about 11 o'clock. Sometimes she would watch 2 movies because she wanted to make sure she had seen all the Oscar-nominated films before the presentations. She wanted to get a tattoo. She never quite got around to getting a tattoo, but she had decided what it was going to be. It was going to be the symbol of the Unitarian Church, and it was going to be on her ankle. And she wanted to sign up for a stand-up comedy class that was being offered by Arizona State University. Again, she didn't live long enough to do that. She died quite suddenly of a heart attack. But her interests were so wide-ranged. She was a rabid Democrat. I will never forget when I was visiting her in Phoenix, and we went to some artsy little town that had a shop that had all these wonderful, very realistically designed stuffed animals. That's all they sold in the store was stuffed animals. And we were looking for something for her new granddaughter. And there was the most wonderful elephant. I'm a big elephant fan. And so I was encouraging Dorothy. I said, oh, this one is so, she would not touch an elephant because it was the mascot for the Republican Party. Wouldn't go near an elephant. But she was head of the Democratic Party here in Mecosta County for many years. She would host parties. I met Carl Levin at her house and Debbie Stabenow at her house. And very politically active, interested.